1. This is kind of one of my favorite stories because there's so many things in it. What do you think? About life and what's going on and stuff like that. And then you think, why do certain things end up where they are and decisions that people make? And this is one of the times, and the only reason I know this because it'll say it in the next chapter, there's not a lot of the prophets getting words from the Lord. So there isn't truly a prophet. Samuel's what they call the first prophet, right? And this is the story of his birth. He was also a judge, but he starts the prophets. And so before then there was the judges, and the last judge, I could be wrong, I think was Samson. So since whoever the last judge was until Samuel, there's really no word of God. But getting started on that, we kind of look at how things are going. Now, there was a certain man of this town, Ramesses-Zophim, of Mount Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jerome, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zup, the Ephrathite. And he had 2 wives. The name of the one wife, one was Hannah, and the name of the other was Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, and Hannah had no children. Now, this next verse, they have the thing, and if you're familiar with the Old Testament, they went every year up to the Lord, up to the temple, and back then they would have went to the tabernacle because it wasn't a temple yet. So once a year, they went up to worship and the sacrifice. You hear that was at Shiloh. And that's what they're doing. They went up to, And this man went up out of his city yearly to worship and sacrifice unto the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. And the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, the priests of the Lord, were there. This is Eli's when we learn about him, he's kind of a pretty wanting to serve the Lord kind of guy. His sons are not. So he did, and you think about I read the Old Testament. So if you're having trouble with your kids, you're not wrong. Because David, his chased him right out of Jerusalem, so you can't have much more trouble than that. Samuel has trouble with his later on. There are just so many of them, and Eli has no control over his. And now, when the time was that Elkanah offered, he gave to Peninnah his wife and to all her sons and her daughters portions. But to Hannah he gave a worthy portion, for he loved Hannah, but the Lord had shut up her womb. So now, you think what he's doing puts any difference between the 2 wives? They get a portion, she gets a worthy portion. He shows favoritism. And then, the reason I say that, and her adversary also provoked her sore, for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. So, like the sister wives, that wasn't working real well here. So when you think about it, the other wife is your adversary. So it had to be a real peaceful household for you. And so as he did so year to year, when she went up to the house of the Lord, so she provoked her, therefore she wept and did not eat. So now she just, the whole time I guess they're going there, she's working on her, you ain't got no kids, and back then that was a bad thing. If a woman didn't have a kid, that meant that she wasn't blessed by the Lord. Then her husband, I guess we all come up with brilliant things to say. And then Elkanah, her husband, to her, Hannah, why weepest thou? Why eatest thou not? And why is thy heart grieved? Am I not better to thee than 10 sons? And then because of her prayer, I'm going to go with the answer that is no. You know. So sometimes when I read this and I think, yeah, you know, I've never said anything dumb like that to anybody, you know. So Hannah rose up after they had eaten in Shiloh, and after they had drunk. Now Eli the priest sat upon the seat by the post of the temple of the Lord. And, you know, I can only think of a few times in my life that I've ever prayed like this. One was when my granddaughter was 8 and they were going to do open heart surgery. We were really scared for what was going to happen to her because this time she was really weakened and stuff like that when she went off for that. But she was in the bitterness of her soul and prayed unto the Lord and wept sore. And she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt indeed look on the affliction of thy handmaid, and remember me and not forget thy handmaid, but will give unto thy handmaid a man-child, then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head. So what is she making him? The promise that she's going to make him. Why? What does that make him? A what? A Nazarite. That's the vow of the Nazarite. Now, whether that's actually what she's doing, but that's what Samson was from his childhood. Oop, that wasn't good. I shrank my word, I can't see. And I'm going to quit touching that. And she vowed that no razor had come to his head. And it came to pass, as she continued praying before the Lord, that Eli marked her mouth. Now Hannah, she spake in her heart only, and her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she had been drunken. And Eli said unto her, How long wilt thou be drunken? Put away the wine from thee. And Hannah answered and said, No, my Lord, I am a woman of sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but have poured out my soul before the Lord. Count not thy handmaid for a daughter of Belial, for out of the abundance of my complaint and grief have I spoken hereto. And Eli answered and said, Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant thee thy petition that thou hast asked of him. So, you know, you hear people say, well, drinking's not considered bad or this, that, or the other. What did she say it was if you were drinking and drunken? What were you a daughter of? She would have been a daughter of Belial. That would be like a devil. And she said, Let thy handmaid find grace in thy sight. So the woman went her way and did eat, and her conscience was no more sad. So this part here, I think, is kind of, what do you think she's thinking right now? She went away, she ate, she got up. He said that, you know, he said that go in peace, the God of Israel grant thee thy petition. So she, assuming the priest said that, you think she believes her petition's going to be done? Well, no, she went from being sorrowful to ate, washed up, got ready, and went on. And they arose up in the morning early and worshipped before the Lord and returned and came to their house to Ramah. And Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. Wherefore it came to pass, when the time was come about after Hannah had conceived, that she bare a son and called his name Samuel, saying, Because I have asked him of the Lord. And the man Elkanah and all his house went up to offer unto the Lord the yearly sacrifice and his vow. But Hannah went not up, for she said to her husband, I will not go up until the child be weaned, and then I will bring him, that he may appear before the Lord, and there abide forever. She made a vow, and apparently he's allowing the vow to go on. If he had said, no, that ain't happening, she would have been released from her vow, And then it wouldn't have happened. But he didn't say anything. He just went on up. And Elkanah, her husband, said unto her, Do what seemeth thee good. Tarry until thou have weaned him. Only the Lord establish his word. So the woman abode and gave her son suck until she weaned him. And some people believe that's probably what they considered weaned. He was probably 4 or 5 or 6. He didn't take no baby to Eli. And you're going to know that when we get to the next part. And they slew a bullock and brought it to the child to Eli. And she said, And when she had weaned him, she took him up with her and the 3 bullocks and 1 ephah of flour and a bottle of wine, and brought him unto the house of the Lord in Shiloh. And the child was young. And they slew a bullock and brought the child to Eli. And she said, O my Lord, as thy soul liveth, my Lord, I am the woman that stood by thee here praying unto the Lord. For the child I prayed, and the Lord hath given me my petition which I asked him. Therefore also I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he liveth, he shall be lent to the Lord, and he shall worship the Lord there. Now, chapter 2. So she's fulfilled her vow. She's leaving him with Eli. Yeah, it doesn't really say whether Eli thought that was a good idea or not. All of a sudden, because his kids are full grown now. Here's a kid that's 5 or 6. He's yours. Yeah. So I always wonder, I don't know, I probably shouldn't read between the lines, but sometimes I wonder what he thought about that, And Hannah prayed and said, My heart rejoices in the Lord. My horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth is enlarged over my enemies, because I rejoice in thy salvation. There is none holy as the Lord, for there is none besides thee, neither is there any rock like our God. Talk no more so exceedingly proudly, let not arrogancy come out of your mouth, for the Lord is the God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. The bowels of the mighty men are broken, and they that stumbled are girded with strength. And that they were full have hired out themselves for bread, and they that were hungry cease, so that the barren have borne 7, and she hath many children, and is waxed feeble. The Lord killeth and maketh alive. He bringeth down to the grave and bringeth up. The Lord maketh poor and maketh rich. He bringeth low and lifteth up. He raises up the poor out of the dust, and lifteth up the beggar from the dunghill. So to let among the princes, and to make them inherit the throne of glory. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he hath set the world upon him. And he will keep the feet of his saints, and the wicked shall be silent in darkness, for thy strength shall no man prevail. The adversaries of the Lord shall be broken to pieces. Out of heaven shall he thunder upon them. The Lord shall judge the ends of the earth, and he shall give strength unto his king, exalt the horn of his anointed. And Elkanah went to Ramah at his house, and the child did minister unto the Lord before Eli the priest. So did she have a pretty good opinion of God? So, I mean, you just try to think about how much anguish she had when she first did it. Then she got the child, and now she's giving the child up. And it's when she gives him up that she says all this. So now she's going home, and she's back like she started. She has no kid with her. Yeah. But it's kind of unique is you don't hear that woman griping at her anymore. You never hear any more about her. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if that's who it was when she says something about her enemies. Whether she had her in mind. Now, this is how I knew the sons of Eli weren't very good. Now, the sons of Eli were the sons of Belial. They knew not the Lord. And the priest's custom with the people was that when any man offered sacrifice, a priest's servants came while the flesh was in seething with a flesh hook of 3 teeth in his hand, and he struck it into a pan, the kettle, the cauldron, the pot. All the flesh hook brought up all the priest took for himself. So they did in Shiloh unto all Israelites that came thither. Also, before they burnt the fat, the priest's servant came and said to the man at sacrifice, give flesh to roast, for the priest he will not have sodden flesh of thee, but raw. That's actually against their rules. And if a man said unto him, let not fail to burn the fat presently, and then they take as much as the soul desire, then he would answer, no, but thou shalt give it to me now. If not, I will take it by force. Wherefore the sin of the young men was great before the Lord, for the men abhorred the offering of the Lord. So Eli didn't do real good at bringing his kids to follow the Lord. And then it makes you wonder, because it starts out, they knew not the Lord. So it makes you wonder, what did he tell them? It doesn't say. But that was it. But Samuel ministered before the Lord, being a child girded with a linen ephod. Moreover, his mother made him a little coat and brought it to him from year to year. And she came up, her husband, to offer the yearly sacrifice. And Eli blessed Elkanah and his wife and said, the Lord give thee seed of this woman for the loan which is lent to her. And they went on their home. And the Lord visited Hannah, and so she conceived and bare 3 sons and 2 daughters. And the child Samuel grew before the Lord. Now, Eli was very old and heard all that his sons did unto Israel, and how they lay with women and assemble at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And I thought, how much more sacrilege can it be than to lay with? It'd be like bringing them to the church, in my mind. And he said unto them, why do ye such things? For I hear of your evil dealings by all this people. Nay, my son, for it is no good report that I hear, you make the Lord's people to transgress. If one man sin against the other, the judge shall judge him. But if a man sin against the Lord, who shall entreat him for him? Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto the voice of their father, because the Lord would slay them. And the child Samuel grew and was in favor both with the Lord and also with men. Now, I don't know why he didn't do it, but he should have stopped his sons from being priests. He had that authority. He was the high priest. So he could have alleviated them from their office and put some. I can't believe there's no other Levites from Aaron's line that wouldn't have been able to go in there. But that's what Eli's problem is. What did he really do to correct his son? Yeah. And then they come, and a prophet comes to tell him that he's not going to do very well, and that he's going to be taken out from there. Now, and the sign was that he knows that this was going to happen. Verse 34, and this shall be a sign unto thee, that shall come upon thy 2 sons, on Hophni and Phinehas, in one day they shall die, both of them. So this is what the prophet's telling. And this is, so they had that kind of, they had the prophecy, but they just called him the man of God. They didn't say he was a prophet or anything like that. So that guy himself had something very specific for one person. And now I kind of like chapter 3. And the child Samuel ministered unto the Lord before Eli, and the word of the Lord was precious in those days. There was no open thee. So there was nothing for all of Israel. When that man of God came, who was the prophecy for? Just Eli. But he didn't like his 2 sons either. It was just Eli that was for. And it came past at the time when Eli was laid down in his place, and his eyes began to wax dim, that he could not see. And ere the lamp of the Lord went out in the temple of the Lord, where the ark of God was, and Samuel was laid down to sleep. That the Lord called Samuel, and he answered, Here am I. And he ran unto Eli and said, Here am I, for thou callest me. He said, I called thee not. Lie down again. And he went and laid down. And the Lord called again and said, Samuel. And Samuel rose, went to Eli, and said, Here I am, for thou didst call me. And he answered not, I called not, my son, lie down again. Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, neither there was the word of the Lord yet revealed unto him. And the Lord called Samuel again the third time, and he arose and went to Eli and said, Here am I, for thou didst call me. And Eli perceived that the Lord had called the child. So that gives you an idea, even for Eli being the high priest, he was not used to the Lord actually talking to somebody. So now, therefore he said to Samuel, Go lie down, and it shall be, if he call thee, that thou shalt say, Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. So Samuel went and lay down in his place. And the Lord came and stood and called as the other time, Samuel, Samuel. Then Samuel answered, Speak, for thy servant heareth. And I bet you Samuel's thinking, Boy, of all the first things to tell me, I don't think he really wanted to hear this. And the Lord said unto Samuel, Behold, I will do a thing in Israel at which both the ears of everyone that heareth it shall tingle. And that day I will perform against Eli all things which I have spoken concerning his house. When I begin, I will also make an end. For I have told him that I will judge his house forever for the iniquity which he knoweth, because his sons made themselves vile, and he restrained them not. And therefore I have sworn unto the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be purged with sacrifice nor offering forever. So as you read on in the Old Testament, a lot of his descendants have issues. And Samuel lay until the morning and opened the doors of the house of the Lord. It implies that he worried about it all night, to me, because it didn't say he fell asleep. It just said he lay until morning. And he opened the doors of the house of the Lord, and Samuel feared to shew Eli the vision. Then Eli called Samuel and said, Samuel, my son. And he answered, Here am I. And he said, What is the thing the Lord hath said unto thee? I pray thee, hide it not from me. God do so to thee and more also, if you thou hide anything from me of all the things that he hath said unto thee. Samuel told him every whit, and had nothing from him. And he said, It is the Lord, let him do what seemeth good. And Samuel grew, and the Lord was with him, and did let none of his words fall to the ground. So everything that the Lord told Samuel happened. None of the words were not there. So all Israel, from Dan even to Beersheba, knew that Samuel was established to be a prophet of the Lord. And the Lord appeared again in Shiloh, for the Lord revealed himself to Samuel in Shiloh by the word of the Lord. So now this is where we went from the judges, and now it's going to be the prophets. And I don't know, some people say this guy was the biggest prophet. In some ways, I think it has to be Samuel. One, he's the first, and there was really it's not like he had a book on what to do. So Samuel now goes through it, and First Samuel is a pretty interesting book when you read it, for all that goes on to him, because later on when they request a king, he takes it to heart like they don't like him. And God says, no, they ain't rejected you, they rejected me. Because who was the king before Saul? Huh? God. But was their king. But they didn't want that. They wanted their king to be like other nations. And I'd like to say, because I've read all that went on and stuff like that, and all the power that they seen, I'd like to say I would never slip after seeing all that, but I'm not convinced that that would be totally true. Now, Samuel, he had kind of, I don't know if it was daily, but quite frequently, he was talked with the Lord. So I think that kind of a vision would keep you on the straight and narrow. But even his sons, later on took bribes for the judgment. So it didn't work out well at all. Right. And the last judge, which I think is the last judge, so I could be wrong, but Samson, he was probably, in my mind, the closest he ever come to truly being spiritual, and where he really believed God and wanted to do something for God and plus get a little revenge, was when he was blind and he asked God to give him the strength back one more time. Because what's unique, he killed more people with that prayer than he did his whole life serving carnally. And so, kind of when I read, I always hope that I'm going to do better, and then I have those days where I don't think I do. All right. Any questions or? Yeah, I mean, it was his promise to Abraham. And a lot of people, I've heard people say, no, that was just a promise to Abraham. I will bless them that bless you, and I will curse them that curse you. I believe that promise extends to Israel. And I don't think people that went against Israel has fared well throughout history. Yeah. Well, no, even in the old time, Babylon's not around. When you think about it, how many times did Israel go into the promised land? We know 3. They went into the promised land. Then they all took a vacation to Babylon. And Israel went to Syria. And then Syria became part of Babylon and left. And then the last time they became a nation, 47, 48, they became a nation. So, what other country has been devastated, totally destroyed, and came back 3 times? I don't know. I'm not great at world history. I don't know. But so, if God's hand ain't protecting Israel, they're. Huh? Oh, yeah, yeah. If I was an Israeli and you hear God say, Nebuchadnezzar, my servant, that's not a very good sign if you're Zechariah or Zacchaeus or whoever the king was during Jeremy's time that was finally taken off by Nebuchadnezzar. Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar was God's servant. Yeah. Although he's one of the few people of the Old Testament I truly believe came to a saving knowledge of who God was. So, oh yeah. Any other questions? That's all I got.